Something that I've definitely noticed so far is one of the most powerful things in the human experience is romantic love. Uh, that uh, by far seems to have the most gravity out of all human relationships because you have your familial relationships, and those are as they are, but romantic love involves meeting somebody who is not part of your family and creating a new family. And something happens to us when we really love, uh, like something really deep happens. And some of us are lucky. Some of us get to love many times in life. Some of us get to have many real loves. And I would say somebody who has one true real love is just as lucky because operating by yourself, um, while admirable and noble, um, it will only take a human being so far. Um, this goes with our friendships, our various relationships. Romantic love is the one that is in its own category. It's the one that does the most to change you, mature you. It's the place where you find the most the most out about yourself because when you're with people, friends, people that you really connect with, you really do on some level or another become each other. It really is like chemical reactions, two different chemicals coming together to make a third, totally new chemical. And romantic love is the thing that reaches the furthest into people and changes the people the most. By far, it's not even close. Um, it is the driving force for much of the greatest stories, the greatest accomplishments ever. Romantic love has been either a overt driving force or a sort of covert driving force, but it's always been a primary driver for what motivates us. And I would imagine just thousands of years ago, when men and women got together and had kids and had their own little spot where they were living life, the mother and father are the beginning of politics. They're the beginning of this situation where you both understand what you're doing and your primary objective is to shape events, people, the world in a way that is always around your family, the family unit. The family unit is the thing that continuously expands and replicates to become an entire society. We have rows and rows and rows of homes, apartment buildings, just millions and millions of living quarters with people, different families right next to each other, living together, forming these little communities. And it always goes back. That's the center of the cell. That's the core, of the family. And I think we all sort of understand what a healthy family looks like, feels like. Even if we don't have it, even if we've never experienced it, I think we know on some level what that looks like and how it affects us and our hypothetical or real children. A mother and father who have met, who genuinely love each other, who genuinely feel as though they're in the right place at the right time with the right person, and the romantic part of them that seeks other partners, that is open to letting themselves become involved with other romantic partners, is completely gone. That whole aspect of a person, when you're in this, let's call it the idealized true love monogamous relationship scenario, both people in that situation no longer have energy going towards actively being open to letting the chemicals that they are change with somebody else in a deep way. I mean, I've watched my parents my entire life, and there was never a single moment where my parents were open to romantically intermingling with anybody but each other. And that's just what happens. That's what happens when you understand that you've met this person. And I do believe too that each of us across our lifetimes, everybody that we'll meet, there's always going to be one person who is the best for you, and likewise, mutually, you are the best for them. There's always a best mix and a ultimate chemical makeup of two people. And I think a lot of people know that. I think a lot of people have that, but they just don't have that person. I think a lot of people, especially in the age of the internet, you know, it's very different than it used to be. There was this thing that Carl Jung pointed out a long time ago. I think it was in the 1930s. I forget what he called it, but it was basically this situation where some of the women that were coming into his practice would say that they're in this situation where they're in love with a man, and it's a married man or a man who is in some way unattainable, and they're in love with him, like through and through. They interact with him maybe at a distance, sort of peripherally, but it's a sort of relationship where there's this love, but they also know at the same time that they'll never have them. There is no part of them that wants to actually pursue it. And part of that is because it stays perfect when it stays hypothetical. When a relationship exists only in the realm of the hypothetical, it stays perfect. It never opens itself up to those things that are risks, those frictions, those natural bumps in any relationship where two people come together. There's always going to be points of friction. It completely skips over that and allows this sort of idealized peripheral version of this person to exist, independent of themselves. And that was before social media. And you know, that sort of thing goes on all the time, both men and women, where people are in love with somebody, and maybe they don't live by them, maybe they've never met them, maybe, you know, one of any number of circumstances, but it's that person that they think about while in their day-to-day life, while there is people who come and go, interesting people, no doubt, people who there is attraction and all these things, but still not the same as that one person. And you can understand why there are many, many people who are dissatisfied with the romantic situation today in dating today, because it's sort of a prison in a way. I mean, honestly, to date, to get involved with somebody romantically, you have to be a certain sort of person to really see that through and really, you know, especially if you're attractive, especially if you're somebody that most people find attractive. Um, you're almost universally liked. If you're that sort of person, um, for you, it's going to take a little something extra to actually involve yourself in a full, mutual, committed, monogamous relationship. And such a person has so many options. So you'll have 10 people who are perfectly suitable, more than that. And then under those 10, you'll have 20 people who are slightly lesser shade of suitable, but still perfectly suitable. And it puts you in the situation where you just have so many options, so many choices, to where if you do get with one of those people, it's very, it's not very different from the next person and the next and the next. So this filtering, this screening process for dating, as this generation who is adopting the internet is greatly expanded from what it was. When I was in high school, I thought, you know, there was a lot going on there, and that was just like 2,000 people. But for myself personally, if I ever do get married, um, or really, get to that point where I'm settling down and really getting with somebody, you have to be the sort of person who can, just like a light switch, flip it off. You have to be able to flip off that part of you that is open to more romantic entanglements. And not just for a couple of days or a week or a month or a year, for the rest of your life if you get married. And I think that's pretty daunting to people. I think that idea is pretty daunting because people tend to think in terms of this whole grand image. They think in terms of how I just said it. Because it sounds daunting to say, wow, I'll never have sex with anybody else ever again. Well, if you put it that way, it doesn't sound great. It's taken the negative half of the situation. Instead, sex is better, relationships are better when you are with somebody that you love and you're continuously having sex with them, getting to know them more and more and more and more and more. That, in my mind, is the best possible human experience in terms of a relationship where you're truly connected. You truly enjoy each other. You're attracted to each other. You're both on the same page. And day in and day out, you gel. You have friction, yeah, but you basically tell yourself consciously, like, look, this is it. This is the person I want to be with. So I'm completely closed off to anybody else. And if anybody else happens to initiate a conversation with me, I just don't have that part of me that's going to make it anything else but business or, something that just passes. And one thing you're going to realize, I think we all realize at a young age, that romance and love is a very, very big part of the human experience. We twist ourselves up into pretzels. We do a lot of psychological jujitsu when we talk about dating because people don't like to be rejected. People don't want to end up or be with somebody that doesn't fit. And when I say that, I know you know what I mean, but yeah, I mean, I believe since we have such a massively expanded purview of potential people in the dating pool. If you do meet somebody, hypothetically, on a place like the internet where there's billions of people who makes you feel something um, very, very different, and you make them feel something very, very different, I feel like that relationship is going to be far better than relationships otherwise could have been, because it's like the finest of the finest of the fine. It's it's among a pool of millions of people, just this one person is the one that grabs you, that grabs your attention, who you're going to think about no matter what you do, who you feel like there's some kind of tether or some kind of pull, some kind of gravity. And it's those relationships, if you get into them, that will satisfy you. And yeah, I mean, romance is still something that is a bit of a mystery in a lot of ways, because from the male point of view, women have a lot of hazy, sort of mysterious elements to them. And from the female point of view, men have a lot of hazy, sort of mysterious elements to them. And that's perfectly natural. We are the same species, we are one and the same, but it's that little dividing line between male and female that makes us foreign to each other, that makes us mysterious and hard to understand. But if you do fall in love with somebody in the truest of ways, that barrier that keeps people from understanding melts away, and you see the opposite sex in a way that you never will have, you never have before, you never will again. When a man and a woman truly, truly fall in love with each other, for each other, they become this one true glimpse and view into humanity, into the opposite sex, in a way that's distinct from all other past relationships. It's like this cheat code to truly understanding what's going on, because the intimacy, the level of intimacy is so in depth that you really do see a human being there. You really do see something different. And it is something that will change you for the rest of your life, and you'll never forget. And when you're younger, the first time I fell in love was like in elementary school. Um, I've always had I don't know, I don't want to brag. Women have always liked me, you know, over my life, starting from just very early on. And I remember when I was younger, I couldn't tell who liked me or who was just being friendly, because everybody was nice. Everybody is still nice. Everybody is still friendly. So yeah, and there's female versions of that. There's a lot of men and women who almost have a universal appeal. And there's something that occurred to me a couple of years ago. Special people require special people. That's just a fact. And some people win the genetic lottery. Some people were raised a certain way. Some people are smarter than others. But each person has a certain charm, no matter where they come from, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like. A certain charm that is almost magic to a certain other person. And you might not think so. You might not think that's possible, but I promise you, that individual way that you are, that many, many don't seem to take a liking to, there's going to be somebody who is completely hypnotized by it. And that's the way it goes. And it's a funny thing to feel fear. The reason why people feel fear when they meet somebody or see somebody that they're really attracted to, they're afraid to approach them, afraid to even talk to them, because this person, suddenly, their opinion is so important. Their rejection of you is so important. Their acceptance of you is so important. Just because this one person who is this certain chemical makeup, and you as your certain chemical makeup, happens to mix in this way that's special. You can put groups of people together, men and women, and there can be people who see this thing in each other, this true thing that's very hard to describe. It's very, very powerful, and only they see it. I mean, everybody can understand that this person's likable or attractive or whatever, but I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about this quality that truly reaches inside of you and grabs you, and it's mutual. I think people would be better served, better off, by just saying fuck it sometimes and doing it, because it is so much easier to keep a relationship hypothetical. It really is, because it does stay protected and perfect and safe. But in that situation, that deep part of you that needs more will always want more. And you'll always regret not saying fuck it and just allowing that person who is just so important to you and yourself to intermingle and let what will be. I think the romantic affairs between men and women um, was the beginning of politics. I think a man and a woman who were bound, coming in contact with other men and women who were bound, was the beginning of politics. Because that's how that starts. Politics is a weird game, and you know it when you see it. It's the art of taking your image, the image of you, and building it in a certain way. It's an intentional way of projecting and shaping the image that is you. And politics is at its best when this image of you that's being cast is congruent with the real you. And politicians are, you know, sort of cliche thing to say that politicians are liars. But that's the case because politicians constantly have to say one thing and do another. Because they're thinking in terms of 51% over the 49, 63% over the 47. They have to say something for this group of people and something else for another. And I honestly don't blame them. It's just the way it is. You're going to be hard pressed to find a person who enters politics that stays completely clean, even if they do keep their soul and they keep their innocence. At some point, you have to, for the greater good, lie. But there's something weird about lying too. It's like, if you lie and you feel bad about it, if you really do feel bad about it, then it doesn't react in the universe in the same way. If you lie and you really, it's a one-off and you have to for the greater good or for some specific circumstance, reality, the universe, God, it really doesn't, you're not going to be punished for that. That's not going to come back around and bite you unless it hurts somebody. But intent matters. Intent truly matters. And a lot of what people are doing in the world is trying to tell you what they intended to do and what actually happened. A lot of what's going on is a discrepancy between how things look and what a person intended. One of the best things that you can do as a person, and this is for every human being on this planet, one of the best things that you can do as a person is master your core language. Don't just learn it. Don't just scoot by with it. I mean, master that thing. Because it is your greatest tool for navigating this world, your core language. You need to be able to be an artist with it. You don't want to just be pumping words out to get ideas across. You want to be an artist. You want to be able to talk from your soul. You want to be able to translate what your soul feels and looks like to other people. Otherwise, nobody's going to listen to you. If you're talking to people just to get information across, that information is not going to sink in. People will forget what you said, or they won't hear you, they won't pay attention. They won't feel the feeling of interest. You need to master your language. You need to be the Michael Jordan of speaking, the Michael Jordan of thinking, because there's a very strong correlation between thinking and speaking and your mastery of your language. It's like I say, the more words you know for any given thing, the more you understand that thing. And it's not to say to put yourself in a situation where you just say words in circles, just to say a lot of words. That's even worse than having less words. Being able to speak in a way that bleeds your soul through your vocal cords and out of your mouth will change your day-to-day experience. People will seek you to listen to you versus people avoiding you because they don't want to hear you. And you can understand, you can tell when you're dealing with somebody who has a very poor grasp of their language. They don't, you can just feel it. You can tell. And it seems like more and more people are honestly getting better at this. I've noticed. Because that's always been something that impresses me. It doesn't matter what some people are talking about. It could be something that's objectively mundane, but the way they're saying it, it's like I love it when people like that talk because I like the way it paints on my mind. I like the imagery. I like the way it feels when they talk. You don't want people forcing things onto you. You don't want people manipulating you. These are all very inferior uses of language. These are surface level, self-motivated, very low level uses of one's language. And this is so important. It's more important than I can actually say. And one of the best ways to master your language is to read and listen, which is pretty boilerplate, but I promise you, above all else, that's something in life that's going to bleed into every single thing you do because you talk to everybody and you listen to everybody. I mean, one who truly masters and understands their language understands comedic timing, understands passion, dramatics, understands the mode of teaching, understands when to listen. It's a far more multidimensional picture of different ways you can talk in different contexts because there's a wide array of circumstances where um, reminds me of my older brother. He's a very loud talker. He likes to talk, um, and he would and he does have a good command of English, but yeah, he's not a very passionate man. You know, he is passionate about the things that he's passionate about, but and he is somebody I like listening to talk to, just because of the way he cares about the things that he cares about. There's I want to call it charm that comes along with having a good understanding of your language and people. And they say some people are just born that way. Do you believe that? Do you believe people are born a certain way? I've always thought it was a mix. I've always thought it's half the way you're born and half what happens to you and what you do with it. Hmm. And then I look at other languages and listen to other languages while people are talking, and there's a certain like listening to Mandarin is so off-putting. You know, it's such a nerdy way to talk. I mean, it's just so hard to look cool and sound cool speaking Mandarin. To be honest, it's just so. And you know, some of the Nordic languages too. They're just so English, especially American English, has a certain molasses to it. There's a certain laid back calm. And one's language does reflect one's state, one's mind. You know how laid back people talk, how super bubbly, outgoing people talk, how engineers talk. The shape of somebody's mind comes out through their vocal cords. And I'm sure just by listening to this, you can infer some things about me. But I'm the sort of person you could know every detail about me. You could know all about me, but I would still be mysterious. People have been telling me that my entire life. Um, and I do partially know why, and I partially don't. It's been a problem a couple of times, but overall, I don't mind. But yeah, politics today, actually, politics and anybody with a public image is completely gone back to sincerity. We want to know, we want to feel, we want to trust that the person we're watching and listening to is speaking from the heart, that they believe what they're saying. I feel like society in the West has grown tired of people saying and doing things for the accrual of power or for their own personal self self interests. I think people really have gotten over that stuff, and with the proliferation of the internet and information, it's so much more difficult for such people to maintain a storyline, maintain a picture, an image of themselves and of what they're doing. Now it's in a place where anybody at any time can just come up out of nowhere and, become the center of many, many people's attention. Like Jake Paul, for example, he was just some kid. It's just it's been smoothed out, it's been flattened out. Celebrities are now just regular people, and to be honest, I like that because it's a hyper filtered version. Um, it's not just the people in our day-to-day lives. It's the addition of everybody on the internet who we consider when we think about who we want to give our time, attention, and effort to, who interests us. And if you have one person that has such a massive appeal, you have to wonder. It's those people who you want to ask certain questions to. You want to find out what they're like. That's like this fascination with celebrities forever. People have been fascinated with their personal lives and to see what they're really like. Um, but yeah, I tend to have an optimistic view of today's events and tomorrow's events and the future. It's very difficult for me to see a situation where humanity doesn't make it. Of course, barring some circumstance that's beyond our control. Because you gotta remember, when people are talking about other people, and when people are talking about events, current events, they're not saying what is objectively true. That's a very, very difficult thing. Very few people are saying what's objectively true. People are saying what it looks like inside their mind. Their mind is spilling out into the world. And more often than not, when I hear some people talk about the modern world or specific people, what they're saying isn't in any way close to what's happening, or in any way close to how this person is that they're describing. There's so many people when I see them talking, and I sit there and think to myself, that's what it looks like inside of you. What you're saying is not objectively true. But while they're saying it, they seem so convicted. So convicted. And I have to say, before you go out there and speak with conviction, you should know what you're saying first. Because imagine speaking with conviction about something that isn't true. How would you feel later? Have you ever done that? Have you ever devoted your time, energy, effort, and your soul to something to find out that it isn't true, or doesn't exist, or is completely wrong? And when that happened, did you say to yourself, maybe I should revise the way I take on information, thoughts, and ideas? Or did you do it again and again and again? And people wonder why there's this mental health issue today. I think it's because people are saying things, saying thoughts that are not theirs. People are saying things that they did not think out and through themselves, and they're not saying it in their own words. I keep hearing the same sets of words arranged in the same order over and over again. And one person says it over here, and then another on the street over there. And I think to myself, it's no coincidence that you're using the exact same sets of words that this other person is. But when you say it with conviction. And many, many, many times this happens. It's interesting in today's world of information how, like I was saying with the courtroom, how you can have one event with two exact opposite interpretations and two exact opposite cases made and judgments inferred on the meaning of that information, of those events. And the same is true with the political realm and the realm of ideas. You can, it's very, very difficult for me to imagine what it would be like to watch that TV, listen to some other person talk about things in a way that's existential. Talk about things in a way that's so removed from the true state of affairs. And you can see the bend. This is true for both ends of the political spectrum. I mean, if you want to talk politics, but this is true for all things. You can always see the bend. The independents are gaining more and more people. There's more independence now, I think, than there ever has been. I could be wrong on that, but people are choosing to go to the middle, to go back to neutral, to get back to center, which is exactly right. More and more people don't like this thing where you're just totally committed to one side or the other. People like the idea of that common ground in the middle where both ends of the spectrum meet and come together and are actually one process. The political process is the synergy of the left and the right. The political process is the left and the right swirling and spinning together, talking back and forth, and making it sound like, they're trying to defeat each other. I mean, they are in elections, but that'll never happen. All that will happen is processes of getting further and further out to the extremes, and then a period of going back to the center. It's a period of reform and reform. It's just periods of reforming after a period of time of pushing and pushing and pushing. And you can tell where we're at now. We're in this sort of conservative side now. Things have gone a notch center right, but the left and the right depend on each other to exist. There will never be a time where there's no left or no right. But it's like I said in the last video. You do not give the extremes your quality time. You don't do that. You just don't. And you have to be honest with yourself if you are indulging that and you've allowed your organization to be identified with that. You have to be honest. You do. People respect that. People like that. People want that. Trust me. Truly trust me. And one of the biggest issues I've seen in modern day is ideas that take hold in civilization that aren't true. For example, the climate of Earth changes. It will always change. Human beings and our usage of energy will not stop the climate from changing. It may cause alterations here or there, but for all we know, Earth grew humanity to pull carbon out from underground to release it into the atmosphere. For all we know, Earth grew us for that function because it wasn't going to get out any other way. For all we know, human beings are here to disperse the various elements of the planet and move them to different locations and change their forms. Because we are a very specific thing. So, You don't need to look at things like that and take them with such conviction. You just don't. The climate will change, but you don't have to believe that you need to completely change it. You don't need to deindustrialize. I seriously question the motives of somebody who would recommend the United States or any place deindustrialize, especially with the headway, the progress that we are clearly making with all different forms of energy and making natural gas and oil cleaner. Um, that's just you know the truth, and I would rather use this period of time that we have, this temporary period of a few hundred years where we're pulling energy out of the ground and use that to leapfrog forward into some other form of energy. But going backwards is simply not an option. Deindustrializing or, you know, because I think a lot of people think that a lot of the problems of the world would be solved if we didn't have, capitalism or this or that. But that is an illusion of illusions. That is absolutely wrong. That is absolutely not how it works. The human condition is the human condition, and we will have this condition forever. For as long as we are human, for as long as we are in this form, and we don't make any serious alterations to ourselves by machinery or computers or whatever, this is it. The way we handle things now is the way we will always handle things. We will go on a nice edge. We will push forward. We will sacrifice ourselves for the people we love. We will fight for what we believe in. We will lie. We will be wrong. There is, of course, the bad half of humanity, and there's the good half. And from what I've seen, especially this day and age, especially in the West, 90% of what happens is heavily skewed toward moral and good and just. In fact, it is so much that we have a very high sensitivity toward its opposite, which is injustice and immorality. Those things in any sort of egregious way happen so few and far between that we're able to make social movements and campaigns based off of them. If those terrible, terrible things were a dime a dozen happening every single day, all the time, they would just be lost in the fray. We wouldn't even really notice it because it would be everywhere. And those few good things that did happen, we would notice. And that's what we would rally around. But we're in the opposite of that right now. In the West, things are so good and safe and comfortable and fruitful that those terrible injustices, when they do happen, those terrible things when they do happen, catch the eyes of the entire civilization for a time. And it's a good thing that this is the way things are. But it's a huge mistake to take those few and far between circumstances and say that that's all there is. And if you are a person who does that, it's like I said, that says more about you than the world.